The first stanza are the words of a man who is going to give his life in the service of his country. Rizal expresses no regret but only joy, knowing that he is not only giving his life but also giving his country, a great gift any citizen could give. In this stanza, Rizal is telling us that there are people who are willing to risk or give their lives for the sake of their countrymen. He is also saying that it is not where one dies, but why one dies and for what purpose. Whether that's a scaffold, open field, conflict, or martyrdom site, all deaths has the same honor if given for home and for the country. In the first and second lines of the third stanza, it referred to Rizal's execution, which happened at sunrise. In his poetic use of color, he employs visual senses, and in the third and fourth lines, he added bright red tints of his blood to the scene and gilds it with golden sunlight. The use of these devices arouses the reader's passion, the same way that it is felt more than 100 times by the writer, even without using explicitly the words that signifies emotions.
In the fourth stanza, Rizal dreamed of making his country free, esteemed, and with his head raised high during his youth, even though other children dreamed of frivolous things. In the fifth stanza, he lavishes her with compliments. He is his ardent and romantic love, his life's fancy. He exclaimed, "Hail!" as many would to their God. In the third line, he says that it is a sweet to collapse so that his country may be whole, and then continues in the following words, "To die to give you life." Yet, his joy does not stop with the act of dying. It extends beyond the cemetery, where he will sleep in his country's mystic land for all eternity. Rizal dies for his country in the same way as one dies for God, and if heaven is anything to look forward to, Rizal's heaven, at least in this world, is being buried in the land of his ancestors. Rizal describes his spirits to a simple, humble flower amidst thick grasses in this stanza. The usage of this analogy reveals a lot about how Rizal sees himself, shy, plain, and modest, surrounded by society's unyielding powers. He imagines that after his death, he will continue to remain in the bosom of his motherland, never tiring of her affection, which he begs her to share with a kiss.
In the following 4 lines, Rizal's love for nature is expressed once more. It's interesting that he mentions the moon, the sunrise, the wind, and a bird to pay tribute to his grave, but he doesn't mention any close friends or specific people. Perhaps he wants to recall a simple image of his reunion with nature. It is also an expression of the loneliness and isolation he has felt and continues to feel in his fight for freedom. He only mentions a friend here, which is the nearest he gets to company, and the 4th lines mention if God is the closest he comes to wishing for a divine heaven. The fact that Rizal asks his country to pray for his soul to rest in God is consistent with the Roman Catholic conviction that all men are sinners and that salvation must be won rather than predetermined before death. He gives his motherland a list of things he wants her to pray for in these 4 lines. He thinks of all the martyrs who have gone before him, who have died for their country. He thinks of the mothers, wives, and children they have left behind, who have suffered just as much as he has. In an optimistic final note, he also asks her to pray for herself.
Unmistakably, Rizal has not envisioned that the landmark would be ultimately be worked over his grave, and has imagined his last resting place as an unassuming burial ground where he will, even after death, sing a melody of commitment for his homeland. In this next stanza, Rizal wishes to then be followed by man. When his grave is not at this point recalled, and he been dissipated as he gets back to be essential for the residue that covers the land he had passed on for. What really occurs, all things considered, however, is an uncannily equal. The principal line in this verse starts following the presumption that our saints' remains have now been spread ridiculous. Rizal imagined that whenever he was gotten back to her as such, it will not at this point matter if the nation fails to remember him, since he will be with her all over the place as reside in the climate, blowing in the skies, in the breeze, and as yet singing tunes and mumbling expressions of commitment.
In the 13th stanza, Rizal says goodbye to his adored fatherland, to his parents and friends. He satisfies his death by saying he will be going to a place where there is peace. He is going to a place where God rules over, not the tyrants. Finally, in the last stanza, Rizal cries his farewell to all his fellow men and his childhood friends who helped and lightened his way. In the last line he said that in death there is rest, which means that he, being ready to be executed, accepts with all bravery after fighting for the freedom and glad to die in peace.